Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar session on the interesting topic, Food Tech Innovations for Circular Economy and Sustainable Food Security. This event is brought to you by the NTU Institute of Advanced Studies, the graduate student clubs of the School of Physical and Mathematical Sciences, the School of Biological Sciences, and the School of Chemical and Biomedical Engineering. My name is Ruchi, and I will be your host for this webinar. Before we begin, there are some housekeeping rules for this webinar. All of your mics have been muted to prevent any accidental disturbance. If you would like to ask any question during the Q&A session, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. When your name is called, please ask your question, or you can also post your questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. For the postgrad students who require the endorsement of their attendance, please scan the feedback form at the end of the session and indicate the need for endorsement. Now let's get started. So today's webinar is being organized as a part of the Discovery Science Seminar Initiative. Let me introduce our speaker for today's webinar, Professor William Chen. Professor William completed his university education in Belgium and joined NTU as an associate professor in 2002. Currently, he is a Michael Pham Chair professor. Professor William is principal investigator of many competitive grants from major government funding agencies as well as international food industries. His research is highly interdisciplinary with a strong focus on platform development for food tech innovations. His innovations and views on food security have been featured in BBC, Bloomberg News, CNN, Los Angeles Times, The Wall Street Journal, and many more. He has received many recognitions in his career. He's on the advisory committee of the Singapore Food Agency, Singapore Food Standards Committee, expert advisory panel of Food Innovate Asia. He's also consulted to the Food Institute, World Health Organization, and Asian Development Bank. Recently, CNN described him as a game-changing leader in the green revolution of the food system. Without further ado, let's welcome Professor William. Professor William, please.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me to share our food R&D activities with all the students. I only have about 12 slides, so we will have more time for interactions. So I'm from the School of Chemical and Biomedical Engineering, but I'm also helping the university to coordinate the food science and technology program. And along the way, we have actually, you will see that we have also evolved into an integrated platform that include education, research, industry engagement, and so on. So food science and technology program is one of the many activities in the food space at NTU. So today's talk, I will just focus on FST, which stands for Food Science and Technology. So if you can see on this slide, NTU FST is actually started off as an education program. Then we actually along the way inject the research component. In terms of education, we started off as a second major in partnership with the Dutch university called Wageningen University and Research, which is very well known in the area of food science and technology. The partnership with WUR started in 2014. As a second major. So we actually offer this second major to 30 students a year to 4-degree program. That is biological science, chemistry and biological chemistry, chemical engineering, and bioengineering. Yep. So across 2 colleges and the 3 schools. So over the years, we had, so the program is actually managed by Education Management Committee that has representative from SBS, SCPE, and SPMS. And over the years, we have realized that the food science and technology is not a popular choice for students to pick when they enter university. So we actually have worked very hard to raise awareness of the importance of FST to the pre-university level students. And this includes some workshop you see here. We organized for the JC student. And we also go to their career day at the school to explain the importance of food science and technology. And things are changing alongside the government's push towards food security. So since last year, we see for the past few years, we see more and more increased interest in the FSC. And I will skip the details, but just to share that one of the outcomes is that one of the very top secondary school started the FSC course since for the past 2 years, since 2019 or 20. So this is really a sort of significant change, because if you consider FST at the preschool level in Singapore, it has been an elective for O-level students, and sort of more like a vocational training for the ITE students. For JC students, for IP track, no, I mean, this not part of the awareness. So we are changing this. How do we do that? I think very much to do with our innovations, because our innovations, as you will see, they tend to be simple and very easy to resonate for everyone. And so that, in a way, help us increase the interest in the student. And recently, as you may have read in the news, we have also partnered with the Good Food Institute, which has a headquarters in the US, but they also has been brought into Singapore to set up the regional office by Economic Development Board in Singapore, so EDB. So you can see this is a new report. They are actually, we start offering this new course in the whole APAC region. We're the first one to offer the UG course on future food. So why we started the research part? Partly because we want to value add to our education. Partly we also want to contribute to Singapore food industry and the food security. And so we actually look at the landscape of food security in Singapore, as you will see in the next slide. There are actually 3 components. One is primary production. Second one is processing efficiency of food processing. Third one is aging population. So we focus on the food waste valorization, as the title of my presentation indicates. Why? Because although we are near Lim Chu Kang, NTU is not known to do farming. We don't have an agriculture credential. And so, but we have already have NUS, TLL, Temasek Life Science Laboratory. They are very strong in this field. So in view of the small country and limited resources, there's no point to compete and duplicate what other people have been doing. So we keep this at the back burner. Aging population, here we talk about the nutrition. So we are I think the youngest FSC program in town. So if we don't have a product to show to consumers, so there's no point, no one will listen to us, because nutrition being so cultural, personal, and emotional. If you don't have a product, what's it? Who will believe? Who will listen to us, right? So at the time we had decided to move into this food waste valorization. Back in 2014 and 2015, I don't think many people talk about this food waste valorization. And yet we see this as a huge potential to sort of rob in different expertise from NTU. NTU being a very comprehensive university, we have expertise in STEM, we have education, we have expertise in the social science for consumer education. We also have expertise in nutrition from LKC Medical School. So this is one of the reasons that we move into food waste valorization. The other stronger reason is actually food waste generation is really a serious challenge. At the time when we picked this topic, I mentioned that not many people talk about this, but today, in view of this climate change and then the COVID-19 pandemic, which impact on the global supply chain, including the food supply chain, food waste generation and reduction become actually a more urgent issue to be tackled. So we really sort of picked the right topic years ago. So now we actually have a leading, we are in the leading position, at least in Singapore, about this food waste valorization. Another thing is that the food waste should be reduced. Food waste should be reduced because that will help our government reduce a burden on the food import, and then we also can achieve better utilization of available food. So there are many reasons why we choose this food waste valorization. So I actually have prepared 3 slides at the bottom to illustrate the how we tackle this food waste reduction. We take 2 approaches. One is to reduce food waste generation. The second one is from the existing and generated food waste. We take value out of this food waste. So when we combine these 2 approaches, moving in opposite direction, we actually achieve the goal, that is overall food waste reduction. So on the top left corner, what you see here is actually the end point. That is by removing food waste, we created this food circular economy scenario. So this is a really ideal situation that is, you know, right now the whole world lives on this linear economy. That means we buy things in, we throw things out. But in the circular economy model, there's nothing comes out of this circle. So this is ideal for the environment, for our food security, and for everything else. For the now coming back to the first one, that is reduction in the food waste generation. We do so by developing natural food preservatives. This is we use precision fermentation to sort of produce at scale the plant metabolite, which are known to have antimicrobial activities. So our result shows that these natural food preservatives actually work a lot better than the chemical preservative. So in time to come, they will achieve 2 goals. First, extend shelf life of food produce. Second, to reduce a chemical ingredient in the processed food, so consumer will be more will be more receptive towards new food product. And now the food waste reduction, the second approach is take nutrient out of food waste. Here, I just show you an example of fermentation. Right? Just now I talked about the natural food preservative. We use precision fermentation. Here, for the nutrient recovery, we use biomass fermentation. So this is really rely on the hydrolysis of a reaction to break the polymeric form into building blocks like protein down to amino acid, carbohydrate down to monomeric sugar, things like that. But as you know, not all the food waste can be hydrolyzed. So there will be a substantial amount of insoluble fiber that stay behind. So here we have developed green processing technology to take cellulose out of these remaining residues and develop them into biodegradable packaging materials. And so in doing so, we really close the loop. There's no more waste. This is where we achieve this food circular economy model. Okay, so I just show you a few examples because in view of the limitation in time, time constraint, you're welcome to contact me, and I will share more details with our publication and so on. So this is an example of the biomass fermentation to take nutrient out of the okara, stands for soybean residue, right? Okara is a Japanese word, which means noble husk. Noble husk means this remaining solid residue still have a lot of value. As you can see on the table, it's still very nutritious. So it's a total waste that we send for burning or throw in the environment. And so this is the images you see here illustrate our progression from lab scale fermentation on the petri dish that all the students are familiar with, up to prototype. And now we are talking about in the FSC program, we have a bioreactor of 5 liter, 20 liter, 100 liter. So this brings us closer to the industry. So what is the usefulness of this fermented product, you may ask? So we have shown that the fermented product, because fermentation itself is very low cost, and then the soybean residue comes as almost no cost. So the whole process is very low cost. And we have demonstrated that it can replace the culture medium for the microalgae. Some of the microalgae, as you know, are rich in protein, which can be considered as a future protein supply. And another recent discovery is that this cellular agriculture, which means cultivated meat, is very popular now. But the bottleneck is that they still rely on the very expensive and not so ethical use of fetal bovine serum. So our recent discovery shows that we can actually replace this critical component with the okara. Yeah. Another usefulness of this fermented product is that it can be channeled back to the food chain. So this is the whole purpose. We are actually taking value nutrient out of the side streams. I don't like to use the word waste, because waste is sounds, no one like to talk about waste. So I would say it is more like side streams. That means secondary product. Yeah. So in this case, we can actually reconnect back to the food chain. One of the line of product will be pushed out in our industry engagement in the coming month. Yeah. This one I would more or less just show you. This is a precision fermentation. The plant, the synthesis pathway for the metabolite has been put into the food grade yeast. And then as the yeast grows, these metabolites are secreted in the medium. Then we just collect the culture medium, concentrate, and then use as antimicrobial compound for the use for the purpose of a natural food preservative. This is a sort of illustration of how our technology can be applied to take cellulose out of the remaining residues. I like to mention that our technology always platform in nature. This is important. What is called platform in nature? For example, when you talk about fermentation, that means the same process can be applied to various raw materials. That can be soybean residue, can be blue span green. As long as nutrient rich, we can apply our fermentation. Likewise, this cellulose extraction technology can be applied to soybean residue and also durian husk. Some of you may have read that the NTU FSC has recently developed this antimicrobial hydrogel from durian husk. This is actually the underlying technology is a cellulose extraction. So the rest, I will not go into the details. These packaging materials can be either clean film or antimicrobial hydrogel bandages. They are all biodegradable. This is the data shown here, but in view of time constraint, I will not go into the details. This is our industry engagement. So how do we contribute to Singapore food security? Well, one way is actually to commercialize our innovation to commercial product. So here I will illustrate some example to you. Back in 2019, we were approached by FNN. Everybody knows about FNN. So this 100 plus and other type of food product. So they have been around in Singapore for 140 years. At the time when they approached us, we were about 4 years old. So we are very honored that they have chosen NTU as a partner for their first external R&D lab. The Joint Innovation Lab was opened by then Minister of Education, Mr. Ong Ye Kang. And today, the first line of product will be launched in a few months' time. We have other type of industry engagement, like for example, we will feature in the Business Time front page about our innovation, disruptive innovation. In this case, they actually mentioned our partnership with a local SME to produce probiotic ice cubes. So today, this is a report was in 2019. Today, the probiotic ice cube can be found in NTUC Fair Price freezers. Yeah. Many of you may not know that the antimicrobial masks, which were distributed to all the Singapore household in April last year, at the peak of pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, the antimicrobial compound actually is our NTU IP. So the company actually licensed out the IP and incorporate it into the textile material. And this is our way to contribute to the Singapore government's effort to reduce the spread of COVID-19. And this is the example of sort of fermented okra, the usefulness of this fermented product. This is, as I mentioned earlier in the previous slide, this shows that the bottom panel shows that the fermented okra can replace microalgae culture medium, but achieve even better result. You can see that at 48 hours, the microalgae growth is better from the fermented okra as culture medium compared to the commercial culture medium. And more importantly, the cost is much lower. We achieve about 10-fold improvement. And this one is actually our collaboration with a German company called Intersnack. For those who like to eat cashew nut snacks, the Intersnack is the biggest world biggest producer of cashew nut snacks. So we have a research collaboration agreement to improve the peeling efficiency of the cashew nuts. I already mentioned this antimicrobial bandages. Here is another application of fermentation, but here in this case, we are talking about taking chitosan out of prawn shells. And in this case, fermentation is there to, instead of taking nutrient out of the prawn shells, is served to remove the protein, lipid, and minerals from the prawn shells. And then what we have at the end of the day is actually concentrated chitin and chitosan. And here is our product. This is a chitosan-based packaging film from prawn shell. This one I will explain in the next slide. Okay, so this is a summary slide. The key tech innovation that we have developed, like I mentioned, is always we focus always on platform technology. Why? Because platform technology allow us to move faster and also solve the problem more efficiently, instead of developing one-to-one solutions for food problem, which will take a much longer time and will be more costly. So the key technology we have developed is biomass fermentation. I have already explained on the nutrient recovery, precision fermentation to sort of synthesize, produce compound, additive ingredient of our choice through this precision fermentation process. And I also have explained to you the extraction or cellulose extraction technology towards sustainable packaging. So you can see that from the food waste reduction, we have really achieved one stone, two birds type of endpoint. One is reduce food waste, second is reduce plastic waste, right? Moving forward, we are also looking into how these ingredient recovered from the side streams from food processing industry can be can contribute to the nutrition of consumers, right? So here we are developing in collaboration with other schools and entity, NTU and then US and around Singapore, how to develop a sensory science and gut microbiome which link to nutrition. In terms of a collaboration with the government agency industry, you can see that so on the left-hand side is our tech innovation. On the right-hand side is our collaboration. So I think some of you may have seen the news in April, we have launched this Future Ready Food Safety Hub at NTU. That is a part of the Singapore Food Story R&D program. This is a tripartite partnership between Singapore Food Agency, A-Star, and NTU. So NTU is has the honor to be the host of this initiative. The second one is Singapore Agri Food Innovation Lab, which will be launched in a few months' time. Here we're talking about integration of innovation and commercialization and the grooming of the startups and the SMEs in actually pushing this food tech implementation to greater food security. I think more news will be coming soon. We are also working with NRF, National Research Foundation, in partnership with German, in this case, TUM. Is a well-known university in the technology field, including food tech. So we are developing a sort of other ways, better ways of connecting the food waste valorization with the nutrition application. So more to come in the near future. At the bottom is our ongoing industry engagement. You can see that we engage industry through two main mechanisms. What RCA stands for Research Collaboration Agreement. IP licensing stands for make money out of our innovation and sell it to the company. So you can see that we have a number of a commercialized food product through our industry engagement. A number of IP have been licensed out to industry, and then even more research collaboration agreements are going on. So I think this would really serve as a bridge connecting academia with industry and society, and also give our students a good opportunity to see what the food industry working environment is like. So we welcome students to come to send your inquiry about the opportunities to work in the food industry. Okay, I would go fast about this one. This is our engagement with the community. On the bottom left corner, this is our free of charge transfer of our innovations to local charity organization. In this case, called Willing Heart. So they actually cook these free meals for the needy residents using leftover vegetables, but still edible from the Pasir Panjang Wholesale Center. But they still have a substantial amount of leftover vegetable that cannot be used. So we help them develop this apply this fermentation technology to develop this sanitizer, biodetergent, so that the needy resident not only they get the free meal, but they also get the sanitizer for sort of also effort to reduce spread of COVID-19. The rest of our interaction with community, I will skip for now. So we do not just work with industry and the media. So the international media also are taking note of our innovations. Like for example, like the host just introduced, like CNN actually has broadcast our innovation in the program called Going Green. I think this is in the 2019 program, December 5th. And this is my research group. This is an education group. And we also publish in all the top journals in the food space that can include the you name it, trends in food science and technology. This one is for the this antimicrobial and biodegradable hydrogel bandages. We also publish in Journal of Agriculture and Food Chemistry, food chemistry for the natural food preservative, and Journal of Functional Food. So all these are representative of the top food journals. So you can see that our academic standing is also very strong. So I mentioned this engagement with government agency. So this is something that has recently happened in April. We have launched this new hub at NTU. So this is a Straits Times report. This launch was alongside of this first Food Science and Technology Global Conference, also at the NTU. This is a Singapore Agri Innovation Lab. You can see that this cut across the entire value chain of agri-food up to sort of agriculture farming side, passing through the processing part and then down to the consumer end. So we are working very closely with, for a start, with Nanyang Business School, because they are strong in the business development and also supply chain monitoring. So this is sort of funded by Enterprise Singapore. What we aim for is really to commercialize as much as possible the innovations developed by our capable colleagues from not just NTU, but also NUS and other IHLs in Singapore. So in time to come, you will see a more vibrant and integrated food tech space in Singapore, and in turn, in return, we'll see a greater food security in town in Singapore. This is my last slide. Basically, we are also working with government agencies to sort of push out using our innovation. Otherwise we are just an internet researcher. If we don't have our own innovation, always say other people can say the same thing too. So here we use our innovation to sort of push out the message in a more convincing way, how this innovation can be useful, can be important for enhancement of food security. And this is a policy magazine called Envision under Ministry of Sustainability and the Environment. So the magazine comes out only 2 issues a year, and I'm very happy to share with you that NTU has been regularly featured in this policy magazine. So in closing, I have also this circular model to show that the food circular economy is possible, and then with sort of a collective effort from NTU colleagues, we can do better. And we also welcome students' participation in this effort. And so we believe that the talent development is a critical part of a sustainable food security, because if there's no one interested in the food tech, then there will be no sustainable food security for Singapore. And NTU is very well positioned in this field, because being a university, we are also working with international overseas university and international organization like the Good Food Institute to achieve a greater objective towards food security. Thank you so much. That's my last slide.
Thank you, Professor William, for such an insightful talk. Let's move on to the next segment of the seminar, which is Q&A. So attendees who would like to ask questions can use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. When your name is called, please unmute yourself to ask the question. Alternatively, you can also send in your questions under the Q&A tab. So while the audience is coming up with their questions, I would like to ask some questions that were sent by our participants at the time of registration. So the first question is from Won Nee, and he would like to ask, are there already industrial methods used to preserve okara from soybeans so that it can be used for further downstream purposes?
Well, okara is actually a solid residue that comes out from the bean curd processing, for example, right? Sometimes you talk about F&N, they also produce a lot of okra. That is a sort of a squeezing. You squeeze all this sort of soluble form from the soybean, and then you have this okra that stays behind. But I think moving forward, there are better processing technology that is being developed, and my sense is that in time to come, we may not see okra anymore. So, but we are using this really as a proof of concept to show that technology innovation can be developed to tackle these processing side streams. It's not an endpoint, it's a means to an end. So that because we can apply to other side streams, the idea here is actually upcycling. The important concept now is that we are talking about upcycling, not recycling. So what's the difference between upcycling and recycling? Recycling, we refer to like the biodigester, you throw in the food waste, come out with a fertilizer, compost. The key point is that there's very little value add. Yeah, but it's very important for school children's education, raise awareness of this importance of reducing food waste. But as a small country, I'm not quite sure how much compost do we need, how much fertilizer do we need. But so it serves different purpose. Recycling has a purpose of raising awareness. It's easy to implement, but the value add part is somewhat not there. Upcycling, we're talking about create value. So I use example of fermented soybean residue, the solution that can replace culture medium for microalgae for cultivated meat. So we actually create value because we cut the cost for the agriculture, this cellular agriculture, urban farming. So this enhancement of value. Here, a simple analogy would be with petrochemical industry. You know, we import crude oil, we go through the refinery, then we sell again all these fine chemicals. This is precisely similar, and the same thing for our endeavor in the food space. So upcycling is the concept. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Professor William. So the next question is from Julia Teo, and the question is, how does COVID-19 in today's world affect Singapore's food supply?
This is a very good question. Well, COVID-19, one of the key repercussion is that there's a restriction of movement. Yeah. So when we talk about restriction of movement, it's not just about supply chain. It's also about at the farm side. No one will take care of the harvesting, and no one will move the harvest crops to the processing site or to the port for the export purpose. So as a whole, the whole world come to us. You know, nothing moves. For our country like Singapore, we actually import more than 90% of the food from overseas sources. So this is something that with money, we cannot solve the problem. Therefore, developing our sort of urban farming, our own food solution has become even more critical. And so I think COVID-19 does serve as a catalyst to push for faster development and implementation of the food tech into the local context. Yeah.
Okay, and the last question is from Mohammed Ilyas, and the question is, will it ever be possible to sustainably farm livestock to meet the current demand?
Okay. Well, so this is again is a very complicated problem. So if we talk about Europe and the North America, even South America, the livestock, the meat is very much part of the diet traditionally. Whereas in Asia is is the other way around. It's plant-based, right? So, but with the the affluence of consumers with the economic development in Asia, people start to really enjoy eating meat and see the eating meat as a sort of reflection of social status. So if we ask consumers to switch back to the plant-based diet, there is a certain mental block that we need to do some convincing. But beyond that, livestock farming has this very strong constraint, in the sense that if we look at the crop farming right now worldwide, 80%, you'll be surprised, 80% of the crops are grown, farmed to feed animals. That doesn't make sense, right? And while we know that animal farming, especially cattle farming, is not far from being optimum, because you have a GHG emission, a greenhouse gases emission. You have this sort of a pasture that need to be expanded with world population growth. So all these will actually accelerate or worsen the climate change, because if more people want to eat meat, you need to clear more land. So when you clear more land, you lead to more deforestation. And so this is a vicious cycle. So increasingly, international organizations are looking at the ways to look for alternative meat. You know, now very popular topic is plant-based protein, cellular agriculture. All these are the I would say is very good in terms of providing consumers with options. But if we talk about how to make this a total replacement, I think that would take a long time, because there will always be people, the diet would not want to eat plant-based meat, and there are others sort of also constrained, because plant-based meat. I don't know how many of you have tried plant-based impossible meat, or a Beyond Meat or Impossible Burger, right? And it tastes very good, but unfortunately, plant-based protein itself is tasteless. So in order to bring the taste closer to what consumers are used to, you need to do a lot of processing. Here you talk about adding flavoring, adding salt. Then sometimes you may reach a tipping point that you defeat the purpose, because it become a hyper processed food. So I think in time to come, in the coming years, we'll see more options being presented to consumers. But it's very good to have this more option rather than push for the replacement. So this is how I see livestock farming would reduce in time to come, but it will not go away entirely. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor William. For more questions, I would like to invite my co-host Tanvi, and yeah, she'll bring more questions. Yeah.
Hello, so I'm Tanvi, and I will be addressing a few questions. So we start with one of the questions from Leo. So he asks, so all of the participants, thank you for your insightful talk, Professor. And they say, what are your thoughts on other green extraction methods or technologies, such as deep eutectic solvents or subcritical water or carbon dioxide extraction for valorization of side-stream food waste?
Yeah. This is a very good question. So in our R&D activity towards food waste reduction, we put in a lot of consideration to avoid organic solvent, because we do not want to reduce food waste while generating organic solvent waste. So that is not that is a zero-sum game. So there are a lot of green processing technology that use phase separation, supercritical fluid extraction. The question here is that how scalable this technology that are developed in the lab setup, how scalable this can be for the industry implementation. Here, we are working with actually industry to explore this, scalability of these innovations. Yeah, but I believe in time to come, there will be more and more green processing technology, not just to take nutrient out of the side stream food waste, but also to reduce the generation of these side streams. So one example is I share with you the soybean residue. In time to come, you will not see them anymore because the extraction of ingredient from soybean itself will be so efficient that no residue will be left behind. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have another question from Leonard, and he says, do you agree that proteins and alternative proteins are only a very small part of the food sustainability equation?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, alternative protein, we also need to look at the broader scope. There are a lot of alternative proteins. They are already present in the nature. We don't need to make these or grow these sources in the lab, like cultivated meat. One example is what we call underutilized crops. What is underutilized crops? Nowadays we talk about crop farming, about rice, wheat, corns, right, and potatoes. These are the main type of crops. But in nature, there are over 10,000 different variety of nutritious crops, but they are not into this monoculture farming setup because we used to eat this type of crops, and human nature is such that we stay within our comfort zone. Only sometimes the food crisis can change our mindset. I think COVID-19 is a sort of a trigger, but it's not real crisis because we still have a lot of food available. I use the example of a potato, how potato was discovered as a food crop. So 600 years ago in South America, there was a food crisis. So really no food to eat. Not talk about COVID-19, we still can buy food. And people start exploring the nature. Then they realize this potato is actually look quite big, at the time, people look at the potato, the yellow flower, as an indoor plant. Is to decoration, and I realized actually potato can be eaten. So this is how potato comes into our diet, and today is like one of the typical food crops. Yeah. So I think in terms of alternative food sources, we need to look beyond the typical rice, wheat, and the potato and corn, right? We can look into nature. One of the underutilized crop that I mentioned is actually Bambara groundnut. That is available in Africa and also in Southeast Asia. And in a local company called What If Food, I think they are already incorporating this groundnut, Bambara groundnut into the instant noodles. So there are a lot of possibilities. The other possibility will be insect protein. So a lot of people say it's very yucky. How can we ask consumer to eat insect? But I think the one way to change the consumer's perception, consumer education is extremely important, as we know, because if there's no consumer buy-in, no matter how much we produce, there's a waste of time because no one buys it, right? How to change consumer buy-in towards a novel food? One way, not just food safety aside, right? Of course, we want to make sure that food is safe. But one way is actually to present to consumers this alternative protein as an ingredient replacement rather than the whole diet replacement. So it's a lot easier. So for example, I have tried myself the pasta that has incorporated insect protein in it. I think consumers only look at two factors. One is taste, the other one is price. As long the first sensation, is the taste is not too off track, then they say, oh, maybe can give a try. So by injecting this novel protein, alternative protein as an ingredient replacement, it will be a lot easier to sort of slowly change consumers' perception towards novel food. So I do see that there are ways to integrate the alternative food into our conventional diet. So much so that when the overlap is significant enough, the the buy-in will be natural. Yeah.
Thank you. And then there's one more question
Yep.
which asks, do you expect any disease-causing bacteria in the lab scale meat produced via biomass fermentation? And how do you ensure the safety aspect of the process?
Sorry, I missed out the bacteria fermentation.
So during bacterial fermentation and during the production of lab scale meat, do you expect any disease-causing bacteria to be present in the final product?
Okay.
And,
Yeah. This is a very good question. If we compare cultivated meat with livestock farming, I think it's a lot cleaner because livestock farming, you are in the nature environment, have far more bacteria than in the lab, right? And when people use antibiotic, for the chicken farming or pig farming, right? Then you actually to keep the environment clean, so to boost the production yield. But along the way, you also come across all these bacteria resistance, microbial resistance. So the situation in the traditional livestock farming is far more worse than the cultivated meat in a lab space. Why is it good to develop this cultivated meat industry? Because first is climate resilient. We don't need so much land. There's a big plus. Second is that it's climate resilient. You don't have to worry about rain or shine. The cultivated meat, the bioreactor will still function, right? It will still grow, just run, right? In terms of bacterial contamination, this is a sort of on every industry's mind to monitor the contamination and get rid of them before they become a crisis. So I think in the consumer environment, it's a lot easier to monitor, control, and manage than compared to the livestock farming. So the plus the plus point so many more than the livestock farming. Yeah.
okay, thank you. And we can take one last question.
Yep.
So there's a question which says, as a biological science student, what opportunities are there for students like me to intern and gain experience in the food industry?
Okay, this is something I think the sort of the clear advantage of moving into food industry is here, because food is really something very sort of interdisciplinary. Everyone can contribute to food. You talk about, for example, just now I mentioned LKC. Nutrition, right? Nutrition they can contribute to nutrition. We talk about even psychology. They can actually, I would not say influence, but rather understand better the consumer's perception of novel food, so they can contribute. You talk about NIE, right? Then they have this greenhouse, to try out this hydroponic urban farming. And in terms of biological science, well, it's very clear that the biological science is not just about microbiology, right? You also have this sort of understanding of the gut microbiome, for example, and also food safety is another thing, right? So food safety monitoring is quite a critical component of the food security. As we say, there's a saying: no food safety, no food security. So I would say for the biological science student to move into food industry, is pretty straightforward. You can either take up some modules from the FIC program. You know, FIC program is not a standalone program. It's rather cut across the entire campus, although we take in students from only 4-degree program, but there are a lot of food electives which can be offered to NTU students as a whole. The future food in partnership with Good Food Institute is one example, but we are, I think, with university support, will be seeing more and more food-related module to be made available to NTU students. So with this, some fundamental understanding in biological science, and then with some exposure to the food fundamentals, right? Then I think the student will have a very good chance to move into the food industry. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor William. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you, Professor William, for delivering this very insightful and thought-provoking talk. Also, thank you for patiently answering all the questions. I would also like to thank and congratulate the organizing teams for this wonderful event. We would also like to thank the audience for listening in attentively and actively participating and making this session an interactive one. I would request the participants now to please scan the QR code, which will shortly be there on the screen, and provide their valuable feedback. You may indicate the need for endorsement for your attendance in the form.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this brings us to the end of the seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Take
for
care
having
and
me
stay
around.
safe.
Thank you for having me
Professor
around.
Chen. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.